Hi folks, I'm back today with another black and white film review and developing of the film overview. Today we're going to be looking at Arista EDU Ultra 400 black and white film. So we used the instructions inside the cardboard and developed it in Ilford HC 110 for 6.5 minutes at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So without any more delay, let's get right into looking at the pictures, okay? I'll be right back. And I want to start off with some daylight pictures, and went down to Cumberland Falls and shot this film. This particular picture here, you will see some evidence of what some people have mentioned about this film. It seems to scratch easily. I've not had scratching problems with my film in the past, but this one I certainly did. And you can see these scratches right here. Now, I was able to take some of those out with Photoshop. And for those of you unfamiliar with how to do that in Photoshop, I'm just going to show you how that works, because if you want to shoot this film and don't have Photoshop, it might be a little tough. So let's just go ahead and zoom in here on this, and we'll get us a healing brush. And I'm not giving you a tutorial on how to use this. If you've got it, you probably know. I'm just going to show you kind of how we can heal some of this up and see if that looks like something that's acceptable to you. This one's going to be a little tough crossing all those tree branches, but that's kind of what we're up against. Those scratches can be somewhat fixed, but they're not really easy to fix. So we don't want to save that. So I like this film though. Let's go to some of them here and just see how they stack up and look for us. And this down here is the edge of the table, which I cut out in one of my other pictures. And I want to go back here. You can see that using that FM, I usually do my exposure so that I have there's the 3 diodes on the right hand side of an FM's viewfinder that give you exposure. The middle one lit is dead on. The middle one and the top one lit is a half a stop over. Just the top one lit is a stop or more over. So I usually have the middle one and the one above it lit, because I like to shoot just a little bit over so that I'm exposing for the shadows and hoping the film can hold the highlights. And we're going to see here that this film kind of let the highlights blow out when I shoot the way that I do with other films. Seems to be a little bit more sensitive. These things you see here, these are not light leaks, though there's water spraying up off that waterfall. It's kind of a rainbow effect, but since this is black and white, it looks like a light leak or some sort of bromide drag or something off the film and developing. That's not the case. It's just the way, if this was colored, you'd be able to see the colors in it. But the main thing I want you to see is right here. See these scratches. I've just never experienced this kind of scratching before with Tri-X or Ilford. So that's kind of bothersome, but I didn't have it on every frame. So, there again, you're saving some money, and I think it's a good film. I'm going to show you one I got here at Lexington Airport. I took this handheld at 400 speed with that f1.8 lens. This is in the parking lot before I went in to meet some family that was flying in for Thanksgiving. And you can see the glow around the lights, which I think is kind of neat, kind of interesting. I usually see this with Rodinal and stand developing. That's where I tend to see this, but I'm seeing it here with HC 110 instead of Rodinal, and with just regular straight up developing and not stand developing, and I just don't see that in many films that way. So I'm kind of curious about that. I don't have an answer for it, other than that is a strange sort of odd thing. Now I'm going to give you another example of it right here, of this kind of glow that I got. In this particular picture, if you look right here towards the left-hand side where that mouse is circling, there's a glow around that leaf, maybe some of the others. There again, it blew the highlights, the reflections of these leaves. It just blew that highlight completely out, and it glowed around this one, which, I hate to be repetitious, but that's something I usually see with rhodonol stand development or semi-stand development, where I put the film in rhodonol for an hour and just let it soak to get a box speed rating, or an hour and a half for 1600. I've not seen this from just 5-6 minute development time, which is straight up manufacturer's recommendations, and then again not even using rhodonol, so that's kind of odd. But in this picture you can see the highlights are really taking a pretty hard hit. They're just blowing out. So this is how I expose film normally and don't get this kind of highlights gone, but maybe it's a little more sensitive than 400, because I certainly stuck to manufacturer's recommendations on developing, so I did not overdevelop this film or push it. That's just an interesting thing. This particular picture, this is a flute player. Here again you see some scratches in the film. I was able to fix one of these to come out, fix this particular picture to come out good enough for me to use, to enjoy, but it took some work. If I didn't have Photoshop, I don't know how I'd fix it, because that healing brush is something Photoshop's got that I don't know of any other little free programs that have that feature. So that's a bit disconcerting there. Let me go down here and see if I can find some other ones. Now I did take a little portrait here. This is in downtown Somerset. This is John Alexander. He was sitting in front of the Virginia Cinema. He likes to go down there and sit on the bench, and it's a beautiful little town. We love this old theater. And so just happened by and saw John, got to talking to him, had the camera with me. And so I shot this picture, and the highlights on these walls back here, there's some pictures on those, and they're pretty much gone. You can see some bricks and stuff, but anything real light colored, it blew that right out. I can see into the shadows here of the doorway of the theater, which again I tend to expose for the shadows and hope the film can hold the highlights without them blowing out too bad. I see a lot of grain, and if I was going to print this is and maybe frame it, that grain might be a problem. And to me it seems like a lot of grain for a 400 speed film. I don't normally get any more grain than that when I push Tri-X or Ilford to 1600. And this time I zoomed in. This is not the same picture. This is another frame I shot where I was actually closer to John with the camera. And you can see the highlights gone. You can see the grain in here in the background, and some grain against his vest. So yeah, I think Ilford's kind of grainy. I do think it's easy to scratch, and I believe it blows the highlights out on me some. Now here's one where I tried to work on one of the pictures I showed you earlier by turning the exposure down a little bit in Photoshop. The highlights are still gone on both of these to a large degree, but that's still kind of interesting. This picture, this top was in the shadow and was darker than it appears here. To the eye it was darker. Down in here the foreground was in the sun, and you can see it kind of blew some of that out, and but still an interesting picture. But there again, it's going for trying to push those highlights out on me. Here's one kind of interesting and different. I shot this one in portrait mode and tried to cut this tree over here to the right out. But I like this walkway and the way this looked, and I was just trying to shoot some frames up so I could see what the film would do. I kind of like that one. It's an odd looking picture because it's kind of narrow, but I like it. These are some leaves. Downtown Somerset had a tree there with some leaves on it. So I shot these, and the interesting thing to me is these leaves were pretty dark colored, and they come out light lighter than I expected. I got a few scratches again on the film, it looks like, and you can see the grain down in here. Anywhere where you're out of focus, you have your primary focus, so you have the sharpness of the picture, but when you move into an area and look at it where the focus is softer, and in your depth of field, it's outside your depth of field, your depth of focus, then you really see the grain. So the softer areas that are not as sharply in focus, the grain really appears. Down here lower left is evidence of that. A little bit up here in upper right. So you kind of see that there's a good bit of grain in these pictures. It's my Charlie Brown here. My wife has this little Christmas tree. And in this soft focus background here, you can see the grain. This is shot indoor by the light of just the incandescent bulbs, and the camera's on a tripod, and at a large lens opening, probably f1.8. So you get a lot of background blur, but you can really see the grain that way. And again, I think the grain, and I think it's a little overexposed, but I'm using my camera the same way I have for a long time with a lot of film, and this is an oddity for me. I just think this film's a little more sensitive than it's rated at or something. I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody else has some experience with it that they can tell me about. Here's some where I shot it. In the foreground, this stone pillar right here in front of the sign, the sign's in focus. That's the point of focus. The stone's in front of that, should be a little blurry. Other parts should be a little blurry. I can kind of see some scratches along in here that I think maybe, I don't know, probably from whatever happened. The shadows are, even though they're out of focus, they're kind of light enough I can see into them, but the highlights are just gone. So I find that a bit of a problem for my use. I shot a couple here, and this is looking down the steps. Now, I actually pulled this one up a little bit because this is as it come out of the scanner. And I scanned these on an Epson 550V with no modification, no digital lights, anything like that. I just scanned them straight up out of the Epson V550D, and I scanned them at 2400 resolution. Could have scanned them higher, but this is high enough to see the faults in the film that I find, and high enough for me to judge its response to light and how the shadows look and how the highlights hold. So I didn't need to scan it higher. If I was going to print it bigger or something like that, or did it for somebody who wanted it bigger, we could have done it, but 2400 was enough for this use. And in this particular one, the shadows show me some detail. This tree over here, it's pretty light, and but when I look at the other one, this one is lightened up a little bit more. Sometimes I played with the exposure a little bit just to see what would happen, and it's I think this film would be okay if you're wanting to learn film photography and you are willing to experiment some. Now, this is a picture that, this picture here, I use this light bulb in my house a lot. I've shot many different digital and film cameras. I've shot the same shot, and I kind of know how that should look. It gives me a way to measure it, you might say. Because I can shoot this in my house at night, and the only light's off that bulb, and regardless of what camera I shoot it with, it tells me a little bit about how the camera meters and how the film reacts to the light, whether it really seems to act like other 400 ISO films or whatever the case may be. And here, it looked here like another 400 ISO film to me, except at box speed it's kind of grainy. but it's got good, the light, I mean, the light starts out and flows off into the shadows pretty nicely. Uh, Not terribly bad, but I guess my assessment of this film would be, if you're going to just try a camera out and try to save some money or learn photography, you can save a couple of dollars a roll. So instead of paying $5.50 or $6 for a Tri-X, you can pay, I don't know, probably upper threes for this. You can shoot more film in that way and develop it and kind of learn your camera or test your lens and different things maybe. But I don't know about the scratching thing, because if there's a limited amount of ability to fix that in Photoshop, and if you don't have Photoshop, it's going to be real tough to fix. And I was pretty careful with this film. I wasn't roughing it up or nothing, so I don't think it was something I did. I just think it scratches easy. But then again, it could have been something that I do that normal users of the film don't do. But I will say that I developed it exactly like I do my other types of film, and I don't get those scratches on them. So that's kind of bothersome. I think for my use, I'll probably stick to Tri-X and HP5. I think the little bit of extra money is worth it just to avoid the scratches. I mean, scratches alone, I'll pay another $1.50, $2 a roll for film just to not have that problem. But I don't want to ding this film, because I know some people are using it and getting good results, and they're probably handling it different than me. So, as always, I'm just trying to share what I'm observing, and I'm hope if you have some suggestions or something perhaps I missed, you put it in the comments down below, and give me some ideas on what maybe you're doing differently. If you're shooting this film and not getting scratches, I'd like to know what kind of tank you're using, how you're handling it, what your development procedure is, and so forth. And perhaps there's something I'm missing. I'd also like to say that I order my film through the mail, so I don't have another roll of this to shoot, but I'm going to order another roll and shoot it in a different camera, and I think I will develop the next roll with Rodinal stand development, just like I would any other film, instead of using those recommendations in the box, and see what we get. But for right now, I'd say the scratches are troublesome, the grain's okay, the little bit of overexposure problem, I could probably fix that by shooting dead center instead of my normal one stop over. And that's the kind of thing you need to shoot some film before you have to really count on your film and camera combination. No matter how comfortable you are with your camera and the film you've been using, if you're going to try a different film or something like that, it's always good to shoot a roll and develop it and see what kind of, how that exposure, the way you're metering your film, see if that's really working for you. And I will say that I believe I'm probably a little bit bad to overexpose, because with digital, I try to shoot for the highlights and pull the shadows up. With film, I try to shoot for the shadows and hope the film can hold the highlights. In this particular film and developing procedure did not hold the highlights as well as I would have liked. And so that's pretty much my assessment of it. I know it's not a professional or technical review. There's plenty of other places to find those. What I usually look for is someone that shot it and just give me their honest opinion and show me some examples, and that's what I've tried to do with this. One more thing I'll show you before we go. This is my little Christmas tree in the house my wife put up. And you can see every little light bulb on that Christmas tree has a halo around it. If I didn't know better, I'd think this film was developed with Rodinal stand development just because of those halos and that glow. But it wasn't. So that is an oddity. But that's just another example of the strange behavior of this film and development combination. So I like to shoot this film again because I love the price of it, but I'm certainly going to use a different development procedure and see if I can't give the film a better chance to come out with better results. I'm going to try to figure out how to handle it more carefully or use a different tank or something, and There again, if you've got any suggestions, maybe leave them in the comments below, or if you've had a different experience, please share that with me. And as far as Arista EDU 400, I don't recommend it or not recommend it. That's not the type of thing I do. I just show you the results I get, and I try to leave the door of understanding opening where people can say, maybe I did it wrong, because it's very possible I did. But if I did, I'd like to know what I did wrong. And right now, I'm just doing it like I would other films, and I'm not getting as good of results. So there must be something that I'm missing or doing wrong, or perhaps there's a trick to it. I don't know, but I'd like to figure it out. So if any of you have any ideas, please leave me a comment or suggestion. And hey, as always, thank you all so much for watching. I enjoy sharing my just opinions and observations. I'm not a big channel, but I'm flattered when people tune in and watch my little videos and talk photography with me in the comments section. I absolutely love that. I try to respond to all comments. And I thank you all for watching. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more of these, just subscribe, and I'll try to make them. And you all have a great weekend. And thanks for watching. Bye-bye.